Hello, in this tutorial I'm going to show you how to create the bonnet that's part of the Jack Dempsey Needle Art Pillowcase Doll Kit. Let's go ahead and get started. The first thing we need to do is to cut out all our pieces from our fabric. So you should have one bonnet piece and two bonnet brim pieces. Grab one of your bonnet brim pieces and place it so it's right side facing up. I'm going to take my lace and I'm going to start pinning it around the curved edge of the brim. I'm not starting completely on the end here. I'm starting up where this dashed line goes across. The flat edge of the lace is going to line up with the raw edge, and you're going to have the main part of your lace facing on the inside of the brim. So it's not going like this, it's going like this, which seems odd, but you'll see later once we flip our brim pieces right side out, the lace will end up on the outside, but we need to sew it like this first. So I'm just going to pin it in place, and then we're going to baste the edge of our lace to the brim. I'm basting about 1/8 of an inch away from the raw edge, and the basting stitch is just the longest stitch on your machine. You don't have to do any back stitching. This is just a temporary stitch just to hold the lace in place until we can do a more permanent stitch. Take your other brim piece, flip it over so you're looking at the wrong side. At this flat edge, you're going to turn up 1/4 of an inch. And actually the dashed line is going to be at the 1/4 inch mark, so you can use this as a guideline. Press this into place, but make sure you use a cool iron because a hot iron can set the blue mark, making it difficult to remove later. Take both of your brim pieces and you're going to place them on top of each other, right side to right side, so the lace is in between. You're going to be matching up the curved edges and go ahead and pin that into place. Now because this is folded up, it's not going to line up down here at the bottom. Just go ahead and keep it folded up. We're going to pin and we're going to stitch a 1/4 inch seam allowance. When beginning and ending a seam, make sure that you do a back stitch both at the beginning and end. And I'm just doing a regular straight stitch. I follow along with my blue dashed lines because that marks my 1/4 inch seam allowance. On the curved edges of your seams, you're going to clip notches like you see over here. They're just little inverted triangles, and you need to make sure that you do not cut into your stitches because that'll create a hole. And I just placed them about 1/4 of an inch apart. This will help the area lie a little bit flatter so we don't have all the seam allowance fabric trying to bunch up in a smaller area. Once you do that, you can go ahead, take this, flip it right side out, and then go ahead and press it. Now that our brim is right side out, we're going to re-stitch along the curved area, and you can see I'm stitching pretty close to the finished edge. Now this is just a top stitch and it'll help make your brim look finished. Next, take your bonnet piece and you're going to fold it right on this dotted line up here at the top, but make sure you flip it over to the wrong side when you do this. So I'm folding it and the dotted line is going to be right on that fold line. Then you're going to take it to your machine and do 2 sets of stitches. You're going to stitch on each one of these dashed lines, and you can just do a regular straight stitch. Don't forget to back stitch on the beginning and end, and that's going to create our casing for our ribbon. Along the crown of the bonnet, you're going to have 2 sets of dashed lines, and on these lines we're going to do another set of basting stitches. So you're doing 1 on each dash line, and remember that's the longest stitch of your machine. Don't do any back stitching because it's going to help us gather this area, and I've already done that. So I'm just grabbing my 2 top threads and pulling gently, and you'll see it'll start to gather all of this up. So we need to do this in preparation of putting on our brim. Gather the crown so it's big enough to fit the straight edge of the brim because it's going to be placed like this. So once I have it gathered pretty good, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start, you're not going to start here on the straight edge where we have the casing, you're going to start on the curved edge. And I'm going to start pinning my brim, and I'm pinning the right side of the crown to the right side of my brim where the side that hasn't been folded. So this side is folded, I just put pins in it to keep it out of the way. So that side is not going to get pinned. I'm going to line up the raw edges and pin just the brim that's not folded and the crown, and then go all the way around this whole thing, ending in the same spot over here on this other side. Then you're going to take it to your machine and you're going to sew a 1/4 inch seam allowance, attaching the crown, so all this gathered part, to the brim. And you're going to make sure that we're not actually stitching through the folded edge. So if you need to pull this folded edge out of the way and all the lace and trim, go ahead and do that, because it's only this side only, not the folded part. Bring your brim out away from the bonnet, and we still have this side of the brim that's folded and it's not attached to the bonnet. The nice thing about this is that all the seam allowance that we just created between the bonnet and the brim is now going to be enclosed when we lay the folded edge over our stitches. So you're going to take all the seam allowance, you're going to tuck it in, take the folded edge of the brim, pin it into place, so the folded edge should be right where your stitches are for creating that seam allowance. And if you want to remove your basting stitches from the gather, you can go ahead and do it at this time as well. And then we're just going to get a little bit closer, because next we're going to do a hand stitch called a slip stitch in order to sew this into place. So I have my needle and thread ready, and we have the folded side and then we have the bonnet side. So I'm actually going to start on the folded side. And you can see I'm coming up right on that fold, and then I'm just going to make sure that my knot's kind of tucked between, because we don't want to see the knot. And I'm using a contrasting thread, but you definitely want to use a matching thread. I'm just using contrasting, so it's a little bit easier for you to see. So now I'm on the side of the fold. Now I'm going to grab just a little bit of the bonnet right next to the fold. And I like to make my stitches small. That way it's going to be a little less obvious to detect after I finish sewing it. And then I just gently pull. And so you could just see a little tiny stitch right there. So if you use a matching thread, you shouldn't see it at all. Now, since I'm on the bonnet side, now I'm going to grab a little bit of the brim right on that fold again, and I'm just zigzagging between the two sides. So after I grab the brim, I'm then going to go back to the bonnet. I'm just going to pull that, and there you can barely see my stitch. So now I'm just going to grab a little bit of the bonnet. So you're just zigzagging between the two sides, and that's it. One of the last things we need to do is to run a ribbon through our casing. Now, just to help us out and make it a little bit easier, on the end of my ribbon I put a safety pin, and that gives me something to grab onto and just makes it a little bit easier. So I'm actually putting it through this middle part right here. I think the hardest part is just getting it started. So there we go. So I'm holding on to the end of the safety pin with one hand. On the other hand, I'm just gathering the fabric. Then I'm going to hold it with my right hand, let go with my left, and just kind of pull it. And this is how I can just pull the safety pin with the ribbon through the casing. And it's just a little bit faster than just trying to do it with no help and the ribbon by itself. To make sure that a ribbon is not going to come out of our casing, I'm just going to do a couple of tacking stitches right in the middle of our casing area. So I'm going up from underneath through the casing and also through my ribbon. So I came up, and then I'm just doing a very tiny stitch, just going down directly right next to my first stitch. And if you want, you can go ahead and do this twice, just so we're going to make sure it's extra secure and it's not going to go anywhere. So coming up and then going down, and then just go ahead and tie a knot in the inside. After you finish your bonnet, it's then a good idea to toss it in the wash, because then we can get rid of all of the bloom marks that are on it. Then you just turn it right side out, put it on your doll, and tie a bow in the middle. Please make sure to check out other pillowcase doll tutorials by Jack Dempsey Needle Art.